Good evening and welcome to Film Forum, a show where we'll be reviewing the latest films as well as keeping you in touch with the film industry here in Georgia. I'm Steve Markos, your host, and with me as always is Aron Siegel.
How you doing, Steve?
Doing all right. We're going back to our original format now. Last week we reviewed movies. Tonight we're going back to the original format. I believe as usual we have two films to review, and tonight, what do we have, Aron?
Well, tonight we've got Matinee and we've got Night Moves.
All right, sounds like a winner. And then after that we'll have our Critics' Choice this week. It's Sword and Sorcerer fantasy films. And after that, a special guest. Aron's in charge of rounding up the guests as usual. So who do we have tonight?
We've got the Cross Swords, and they're stunt coordinators, combat stunt coordinators. They'll be on later on in the show.
All right, so I guess that'll kind of go with our Sword and Sorcerer type movies. One thing I want to clear up, though, on our very last live show, we had an argument over who got $12 million in A Few Good Men, Tom Cruise or Jack Nicholson. I said Tom Cruise, and you and a caller said Jack Nicholson. Right?
Right.
Now, you saw the magazine from Premiere.
I saw the magazine.
You saw the magazine. Tom Cruise got $12 million. Jack Nicholson got about $4 or $5 million. So I wasn't wrong.
So that's according to Premiere magazine.
Yeah. All right, so we might as well get started. Or what do you want to start with first?
Why don't we start with Matinee?
All right, sounds good. Let's take it away.
Okay, Matinee stars John Goodman and Kathy Moriarty and was directed by Joe Dante. John Goodman plays Lawrence Woolsey. He's a producer of schlock horror films. And he goes around, he tours the country with special effects and all sorts of gadgets and gimmickry to make his horror films even more spectacular. And he's touring now with the film Mant. And what we've got here is we've got a scene from the film Matinee where John Goodman plays Lawrence Woolsey in a preview for Mant. And I'd like to go ahead and show that scene right now.
Yes, the atomic bomb is terrible. But more terrible still are the effects of atomic mutation. Hello, I'm Lawrence Woolsey. And I want to warn you about something that could happen. Something that does happen in my newest motion picture. Observe the ant. A miniature marvel of social cooperation and prodigious strength. But if a man and an ant were exposed to radiation simultaneously, the result would be terrible indeed. For the result would be Mant.
You're gonna miss it.
I feel I should warn you. The story of Mant is based on scientific fact, on theories that have appeared in national magazines. Yes, these terrible events could happen. In your town, in your home, and they will happen in this theater, in Atomovision, the new motion picture miracle that puts you in the action.
Okay, and that's a scene from Mant, which is also a scene from Matinee with John Goodman and Kathy Moriarty.
That'll be opening this Friday.
Right.
All right, first off, I like to disagree with you in your opening marks as starring John Goodman in a story of Mant. I don't think John Goodman has a big role in this. I believe this is really a coming-of-age film, really about the kids that you saw in the theater. They're watching it more than a movie with John Goodman. I think he's really a small part of this movie, and it's being billed that way, I know, to get people there, and the ads sound like Mant, but this is more of a coming-of-age movie to me.
Well, it's a coming-of-age. It's a movie for baby boomers. It's a movie for kids. It's a movie for practically everybody.
Yeah.
Because if you might remember the Cuban Missile Crisis, this is taking place.
I wasn't born then.
Well, I mean, this is taking place while the tour is going on.
Well, there's so many aspects of the film that, like I said, everyone thinks this is about this monster film and John Goodman. To me, it's like you have the background of the Cuban Missile Crisis. You have the fun it was to go to the matinee. You have a little teen romance, and it's not only a romance with boys and girls, it's also a romance with these kids and the matinee grade Z horror movies that were of the time, and also the story of how they went around promoting this film as well. So it's a lot of different things. And I think it's a lot different than people are going to think it is when they go to the theater.
Well, I mean, when I went to the theater, I was expecting to see Mant, and I was expecting just all of the action to take place inside the movie theater, and it doesn't. but you're pleasantly surprised. It's not like...
Well, the stars of this movie are the kids. I mean, it's about a guy named Gene, and I'm not sure who the actor was, but that's who the movie is really about.
Right, whose father is in the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just been sent off to guard for the Cuban Missile Crisis.
What I liked so much about the film was two situations I was never born in. It made me feel like what it was like to be during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And also, my mom, it brought to life the stories that my mom has always told me about when she used to go to the matinee to see grade Z horror movies. She used to tell me these stories, and she made it so fun and wholesome and almost romantic, and I never really knew what she was talking about. This movie expresses that feeling to you. I kind of know what she's talking about a little bit more. This is a lot of fun.
I got an idea of that, too, when the kids are sitting there listening to the Lenny Bruce records and listening to him saying all sorts of derogatory remarks and stuff, and hoping that their mother doesn't catch them listening to them.
Yeah. Well, I walked out of there, I was almost expecting it to be the 60s. I had fun at this movie. I've never had fun at a movie. You always hear, this is fun at the movies. Well, I had fun at this movie. I thought it was a great film, but like I said, I think it's more of a coming-of-age movie than it is with John Goodman. It's very similar to Remember My Girl when they build Macaulay Culkin and Dan Aykroyd and Jamie Lee Curtis. But it's really about the girl, Veda. That's a similar situation here.
But I did like John Goodman's role. I loved Kathy Moriarty's role. She was just so deadpan in everything that she said and everything she did. It's like she plays a nurse in one scene, and it's like the
just
kids
trying
are
to
going,
con everyone into seeing this film.
And the kids say, "Oh, nurse, look, he cut his arm," and she goes, "So."
So anyway, this is a movie that the whole family can enjoy. There's no sex, no violence, no bad words. It's just a fun movie.
And the score is excellent.
And it's coming out this Friday. And I'm going to give this movie 3.5 stars.
Well, I'm going to give this movie 3.5 stars as well.
3.5. All right, then. We're giving it 3.5. The reason I didn't give it 4, actually, is I would have rather seen just the kids instead of John Goodman. I enjoyed John Goodman, but I like seeing the kids more.
I liked the B-movie inside.
I
liked the story
whole thing
within
was
the story.
Fun. All the characters were fun.
I like the gadgets and the gimmickry.
Check it out Friday. Now we'll go on to our second film, which came out last Friday, Night Moves. This is the latest serial killer movie starring Christopher Lambert, Diane Lane, Daniel Baldwin, and Tom Skerritt. In this film, a serial killer is on the loose. He's murdering women left and right, and only the chess master, played by Christopher Lambert, can stop him. Christopher Lambert has personally been challenged to solve the case and be able to figure out what the serial killer's next move is. In the scene we're about to watch, they are on the phone talking about how they're going to catch the serial killer. The two cops, Tom Skerritt and Daniel Baldwin, are the cops. Diane Lane is the psychologist, and Christopher Lambert, who the cops believe he's the one that did it. They're planning out how they can get this guy. So let's roll this scene here, and we'll come back.
Slamming the phone down the middle of a trace?
Oh, you think you're gonna catch him on a trace? What he does is planned out well in advance. The only way you're gonna get him is to rattle him. Make him slip up.
You never know how you catch a suspect.
Excuse me, Captain, but I think Peter's right. This guy's got to be forced into making a mistake.
We didn't ask for your opinion, Doctor.
Well, maybe you should.
You don't tell us how to run our investigation, pal. You got that?
You don't have an investigation without me. You got that?
You two through with this? What do you want to say, Kathy?
He's going to say, I think we ought to play up to his ego more. The more secure he feels, the more chances he'll take.
Okay, what about this Huxley? What is that?
He was referring to a quote by Thomas Huxley. The chessboard is the world, the rules of the game are what we call nature. The player on the other side is hidden from us, but we know that his play is always fair, just, and patient. We also know that he never overlooks a mistake.
All right, that was a scene from Night Moves that came out last Friday. What do you think, Aaron?
I liked it.
Did you?
Yeah, it was written by the same guy that wrote Body of Evidence. I think his name is Bob Merriman.
I'm not sure what his name was, but you are correct on that.
Yeah, it was written by the same guy. And this is so much better of a mystery than Body of Evidence.
Yeah. The feeling I had, it was just a generic serial killer movie. I didn't think it stood out any more than some of them, and it wasn't worse than some of them.
It was much better than Jennifer Aid.
Oh, I love Jennifer Aid. I think Jennifer Aid was a lot better. What I liked about the movie, it has its good parts and its bad parts. I liked the clues. The movie kept me interested in trying to figure out who did it. Did the same with you?
Right. It did. It kept it very interesting, and something that somebody in the newspaper pointed out, it's one of the only films that gives Mad Magazine a good
on the downside of the movie, it fell back on too many cliches from all the other serial killer slasher film. I mean, the movie starts off with two kids playing chess. One kid beats the other one, and he's coming to get his revenge. I mean, how many times have you seen that? You know, when he grows up, he's going to get his revenge. You've seen it 100 times. I just wish that it was almost like these guys writing the script had never watched serial killer movies, because if they had, they would have known all the cliche stuff they were writing into it. Why they didn't say, has this ever been used before? And someone says, oh, yeah, that was in this movie. Well, let's change it.
What happened with this was that it was a script that was originally written by this guy and just put away for some time.
So maybe it came out before the other one. They still should have changed some of the stuff. There was too many cliches, and every time something good came up about it, some of the clues and everything, then they fell back on just something that you've seen 1,000 times. And to me, like I said, a generic film, it'll come and go. It'll probably be on video next month.
What are you going to give it?
2 stars, just an average film. And remember, we give 4 stars.
And 2 stars here, too.
This is a perfect movie. You ever hear, if I saw that on video for $1, I would have really enjoyed it?
Yeah.
That's a perfect wait till video movie. At $6, you'll kick yourself for seeing it, but if you catch it on video for $1, you probably enjoy it.
Or see a matinee. Yeah. Also, we've got a phone call.
All right, go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Movie called The Crying Game, but I've read very little about it. Have you gentlemen seen it, and what do you think of it?
Very good movie, but you cannot know anything about it.
Don't ask anybody about it. Just go see it.
It's a movie whose entertainment value is based solely on the fact that you don't know what's going on.
My next question, I was going to ask what was it about, but I'll take that back.
You got to go in there not knowing much at all, and you'll enjoy it.
How many stars did you guys give it?
I gave it
4 stars.
Either 4 stars or 3.5. I can't remember.
I think we gave it 4 stars.
Something like that. It's a good, real good movie.
Very good film, and you need to see it.
Best movie I saw.
I'll take your recommendation.
Yeah, best movie I saw over Christmas.
Beautiful. Thanks a lot. Have a good night, guys.
All right, see you.
Caller.
All right, now we'll go on to the Atlanta Top 10.
Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and take a look at what you went to see this weekend in the Metro Atlanta box office. The films that you went to see. Starting at number 10 was Forever Young. It drops 1 notch to hold on to a position in the top 10. Remaining at number 9 is Scent of a Woman. That's the Al Pacino film.
That's 4th nationally.
Really?
Yes.
It's doing real well. And I think Al Pacino took on a Golden Globe for that.
I haven't heard that.
Okay. Falling from number 5 to number 8 is Body of Evidence. This is only its 2nd week of release. Number 7, debuting there, is Aspen Extreme, which is like a ski-type film. Remaining at number 6 is The Bodyguard with Whitney Houston and Kevin Costner. And number 5, this is the best debut for this week, is Used People. We reviewed that last show. Yes. Falling from number 2 to number 4 is Nowhere to Run with Jean-Claude Van Damme. And climbing 1 spot to number 3 is Alive. That's the film about the Andes Mountains, the South African rugby team that gets caught in a plane crash
and has to survive.
And the 6th week in the top 2 positions is A Few Good Men with Jack Nicholson and Tom Cruise.
Actually, that moved out and dropped to 3 last week, I found out, and moved back into the top 2.
Okay, and number 1 for weeks in a row is Aladdin. That's with voices by Robin Williams and Gilbert Gottfried.
And that's the highest grossing animated movie of all time, and it won 2 Golden Globe Awards. So that's the top 10, and now on to our Critics' Choice. Like I said, this week is Sword and Sorcerer Fantasy Films. Aaron's going to tell you his top 3, and I'll tell you mine. Go ahead, Aaron.
Okay, well, as far as Sword and Sorcery films, I have to say that my number 3 Sword and Sorcery film was Legend. That's with Tom Cruise and Tim Curry. Tim Curry plays the devil, and he's trying to get a girl's innocence. That was made in 1985 by Ridley Scott. My number 2 Sword and Sorcery fantasy films was Excalibur. It was directed by John Borman, and stars some unknowns as far as America is concerned, Nicole Williamson and Nigel Terry. And this film is based on the King Arthur legend, King Arthur stories. And my number 1 film came out in 1986. It's with, oddly enough, Christopher Lambert, and it's called Highlander. It stars Sean Connery and Christopher Lambert, and it's about a group of immortals that are challenging each other for the title of the one immortal. And that's it.
All righty, and on to my favorite 3. Actually, they're all the same as Aaron's for maybe some different reasons. My number 3 movie I have to recommend on technical merit only, Legend. You can sit through the cornball story and seeing Tom Cruise run around with long hair fighting goblins and stuff like that. You will see the most beautiful film ever made. directed by Ridley Scott. If you've seen 1492 and Blade Runner, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He's one of the few directors that really puts art into the film. Mesmerizing, beautiful, stunning, who can say more? A great soundtrack by Tangerine Dream in the U.S. In the Europe release, it was Jerry Goldsmith. The Tangerine Dream soundtrack really sets the mood for this movie. Oddly enough, no Academy Award nominations. I guess the Academy Award is one of the few and great injustices, I should say. The cinematography is excellent, the sets, the makeup, the music, all wonderful. But this movie is only for people who really want to see technical good filmmaking. The story, like I said, I flush that down the toilet. Number 2, Highlander, also Aron's favorite. I like the movie because I like the movie was made. I love the camera shots and some of the creative angles they used. And I remember when the movie first came out, it was criticized for being too creative, which is kind of stupid. I also love Clancy Brown, who plays the bad guy, the Corrigan. He's one of my favorite bad guys. And beyond that, it's a good action adventure with some well-choreographed fight scenes. And number 1, not only my favorite sword and sorcerer film, one of my favorite films of all time is John Borman's Excalibur. Excalibur is a film as big as the King Arthur legend himself. And, it starts off with his diabolical conception to his death at his own hands. Follows the book very closely. I haven't read the story by Mallory, but I understand this is one of the closest movies to the legend. We see King Arthur from his birth, through he grows up, pulls a sword from the stone, his rise and fall, the search for the Grail. This is another beautiful film like Legend. Not quite as beautiful, but a very good film. Nominated for cinematography. A cast of unknowns, like Aaron said. Nicole Williamson playing Merlin. I remember when it came out, they said this guy should get the Academy Award for supporting actor. He wasn't even nominated. John Gilyard won for Arthur. That's one of the biggest injustices of all time. He did wonderful, and a lot of other characters did very well. Did very good as well. Excuse me. And this is a top good movie from top to bottom. Check it out. One of the best films you'll see. And those are my favorite 3. And now on to video releases. What came out this week? All right. On the video, this is coming out this week. We have Single White Female, which was kind of a little thriller type movie.
That was with Bridget Fonda, wasn't it?
Yes, and I thought that was an average film, about 2 stars. Also, Monster in a Box. And this movie was made by Spalding Gray. It's a monologue. He did a film also called Swimming to Cambodia, which you say, how can a movie an hour and 20 minutes with just a guy talking to the camera be interesting? Very interesting, very good. And I haven't seen Monster in a Box, but I would assume this would be just as good. And on pay-per-view this week, we have House Sitter, Fern Gully, The Last Rainforest, Night Rhythms, and Prelude to a Kiss. Check channel, I believe, 36 for showtimes and how much it's going to cost you. And now back to Aaron.
Okay, each week on Film Forum, we've got special guests. This week is no different. We have Nicole Harsch and Mike Sakuta of the Cross Swords. They're a combat sword technicians and stunt coordinators. And we'd like to go ahead and welcome them to the show. Welcome, Nicole.
How you guys doing,
Mike?
there?
How you doing?
So y'all are doing swords now. What in the world would get you started into sword fighting for films and theater?
We've always had a love for the swords. Watching the movies, watching the old Musketeer movies, the Gene Kelly, the
Zorro, Errol Flynn, that type of stuff.
They're
very exciting to watch, and we always sort of wanted to do that. And we started taking lessons and branched out from there.
Like fencing lessons and such?
That's how we got our start.
Are y'all very good at fencing?
Yeah, well, we started with fencing. And fencing is a sport, and it gives you a good sense of the sword and coordination. But it doesn't really teach you the things that you need to know to perform it in front of people. So it was a good start.
So as far as theater and movies, it's a lot more
How did you get
dramatic.
involved in that, in the theater and the film work?
Well, we made the transition through theater. We started performing. First, we actually started performing fencing demonstrations around the country to drum up support for the fencing club we belong to. And then we branched
Is there a fencing
out.
club here?
Well, actually,
This was back in Michigan.
Back in Michigan, where we were born. But and then we started working in the theater and doing some skits and stuff that all involved swordplay in one way or the other. And we were both involved in theater before this, and so it was just a natural transition to take the sword fighting into the theater.
Right. So through that, we also learned not just swordplay, but kicks, punches, rolls, falls, the whole gamut of violence, you could say, of staged violence.
So do you do the stunt work yourself, or are you telling people how to get hit and that kind of thing?
We do both.
I
understand you brought some some props with you.
Brought a couple
Are they real swords or are they prop swords?
These are replicas. The first one is a broadsword. This is just to give your viewers sort of an idea of what it might look like.
This actually was the sword that they used in Lady Hawk.
Not the very sword, but like
the
sword. The type of sword.
Style.
Now, when you get into the films, are they out there fighting with real swords, or are they rubber, or what exactly do they use?
This is actually
That's an
real
actual metal,
steel.
so that could probably kill somebody.
That's right. This is actual
it's very
sword.
sharp.
Well, actually, it could be sharpened. It's not sharp right now, but it could be sharpened and would hold an edge, or it could be prepared for stage combat use. Either way, in the movies, a lot of times what you see is for close-ups, like when the guy's holding a sword or when he's wearing a sword, it's a nice sword. And then, of course, they've got people off stage who run in and put a different sword in his hand to fight with. A lot of times they use like an aluminum blade, like aircraft aluminum is really popular.
Now, depending on if it's the major star, of course, they're going to teach him how to do his fights, and they're going to be using some real swords. But if you need some fighting in the background, like in a lot of the Zorro movies, you see the caballeros fighting in the background.
Where there are a lot of people.
They may have the rubber swords.
And they're like a group of people storming the Bastille or storming something. They don't have time to teach all these extras all the moves. So they just teach them a couple basic moves and put some sort of rubber blade in their hand and make sure that they just sort of hit them together in a very
What else
way.
do you have?
We have a weapon that would be used in a musketeer movie. This is called rapier. It's a slightly different period. People don't understand when you say they need to know, bring in someone who's an expert on swords to a film, that there's a different variety of swords available, and that there's a different style that goes with fighting with a sword like this than a sword like that.
That's more like a sword and sorcerer type.
That's right.
And this is how familiar are you with the various swords and various armor and stuff?
Well, we've spent the last 10 years getting the feel of all the different swords. So we have actually done combat with.
So you can be technical advisors for swords.
That's right. That's right. And then there are just many different kinds of swords. For example, sabers, like for a Civil War type saber, or a dagger fight. Another thing like a street fight might include dagger. This is actually more of a medieval dagger, but we just thought we'd.
Okay. But the same principles apply whether it's medieval fighting or something like West Side Story, where they might be using,
Well, if you have like guys running around like in the Civil War and they have their swords in their holster or whatever you want to call them.
Generally scabbards.
Are those fake ones in there? I mean, they don't have guys running around with real swords if they're not being shown, do they?
Well, it depends. It depends on the movie and, of course, the budget. But they have like for example, Robin Hood, the Errol Flynn version. They had several swords that looked exactly alike and were identical. And during the course of the film, Errol Flynn himself used several of the blades, and the different extras have them, and they show up every once in a while in a movie.
Could you tell us about this piece of armor?
Oh well, this is it's called a breastplate. Do I need to hold it up?
Yeah, you might as well.
Okay. This is a piece of metal armor that would be used. This particular one is in quite good condition and would be perhaps used by a star, especially for close-up work. A lot of times, what they use is some sort of prefabricated. There are
fiberglass type.
Right. There are all kinds of fiberglass things that look really nice
real?
and technical. This is a replica of a real one.
Now we have some video footage of you doing some demonstrations. Okay. We want to remind everybody that we are a call-in show, and if you have a question for our guests, the number here is 873-6713. Now, why don't we just go ahead and roll these scenes, and when we come back, maybe we'll have some calls.
This girl into her place, but they were in for a surprise.
Inglorious concavity which my finds on top of you.
scene, I guess, from some sword fighting. What
Some
exactly were
select
we
scenes.
watching there?
Yeah, what were we watching?
Oh well, those are just some clips that some performances and some people that we have taught, and these are some television appearances that we made and some other.
How would you go about training somebody to do this kind of work?
A lot of people get into it through theater, taking stage combat courses specifically in theater.
So they actually do teach that in
training.
drama school.
Right,
We teach as well. We're members of the Society of American Fight Directors, which actually there is a society out there of people
There's
who.
societies for
Do you,
everyone.
have, do you have a phone number for people to call if they're interested?
No, I'm sorry.
Not off the top of my head.
there is one available, I suppose, if they wanted to call the studio. We could leave the number here to get associated. But we also train people through the Renaissance Festival, and especially here, and also locally, we do theater productions in the area.
So what are you doing presently? What's on the agenda?
We just finished Camelot.
And where was that at?
That was in Dalton, Georgia.
Dalton.
Okay.
We have
Hamlet
coming up
Coming
at
up.
DeKalb.
DeKalb
College Central?
Yeah. Main
Right, yeah.
campus.
Man,
in
that's
Stoneham.
Central. That's right by where I live. So.
And then tomorrow we go off to Florida to do a Renaissance Festival down there for a few weeks.
Yeah.
That sounds really good.
All right, and I guess
Okay, so
out of time tonight.
we want to ask everybody, we want to thank you both for being here tonight.
All
Pleasure.
That's the Cross Swords. And we want to remind everybody to tune in next week when we'll have 2 new feature releases. We'll also have, our Critics' Choice will be Best Performances in a Drama by an Actor. And we'll also have a independent filmmaker named Jim Hunter. He'll be on next week. That's on Film Forum.
So sounds like you ought to watch next week.
Wednesday night,
it's gonna be a lot
10
of fun.
o'clock. Call us up. See you next Wednesday.